I got fired after 11 days. It was a brutal time in my life to get fired like that. But at the same time, it's like, whoa, thank God I'm not going to be in this viper's nest anymore. I think Trump is really getting his ass handed to him because of the ICE situation. There's a reason why his father sent him to the military school.
To get rid of him, I presume.
Yes. He'll have 25% of the people where he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and stay in power forever and all that sort of stuff. But the current trajectory is he's going to lose the House.
Welcome to another edition of SOS America. I'm Charles Feldman. Thank you very much for being with us. For those of you who have watched or listened to this podcast over the past few months, you know that this is basically a conversation about America, trying to answer the question that many of you ask, what the hell is going on in the United States at this particular point in time? To try to answer that question, we've interviewed leading politicians, attorneys, doctors, you name it, all different walks of life, trying to come up with an answer to that question, and maybe it's an impossible question to answer. Today, I'm very pleased to have as our guest Anthony Scaramucci. He is a lawyer, a financier, which I guess means he is a wealthy lawyer. He's a podcast and broadcast host. And some of you, especially if you are watching this in the US, and maybe even if you're watching it elsewhere, you may remember back in 2017, he was very briefly the White House communications director for the first term of Donald Trump when Trump was president. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us on SOS America. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's good to be on. I was, when I got unceremoniously fired from the White House, you were very kind to me at your radio station. And, we have a good friendship. I'm grateful to be here.
I appreciate that, and I do consider you a friend as well. But I do have to ask you a question. I don't think I ever asked you this when I was doing the radio show, but it may help people understand you, which is, I think, important. Because in the minds of many people, for that brief period anyway, you were associated, obviously, with Donald Trump, a Republican. But your background was really very supportive of, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I very well might be, but you supported Hillary Clinton, right? You supported Barack Obama. And then you kind of went over at some point to Mitt Romney's, who, of course, is a Republican, campaign for president. Where did that transition happen? How did you go from Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama?
And I just want to point out to people that Donald Trump wrote a check to Hillary Clinton. Yes. He also wrote a check to Senator Kamala Harris for her campaign, Chuck Schumer, and many Democrats as a New York City business person living here in New York. And so what they try to do to you in politics is they want to malign you and they want to get your narrative. And so if you say I wrote a check to Hillary Clinton, which I did, and I did write one to Barack Obama, which I did, well, then you're a flip-flopper and you're a unprincipled human being, and therefore anything you say or do should be discouraged. And, one of the first things they teach you, Charles, first things they teach you in trial advocacy is the ad hominem attack. So if Charles is right on the facts, let me demean Charles, let me two-dimensionalize him, create a caricature of him, let me ruin his reputation so that anything that spews from his mouth will be seen as disingenuous or wrong. Okay, so political leaders have been doing that for millennia, and the reason they do it, it works. And so when I joined the White House working for Trump, that was a big message from people. Oh, well, I gave money to Barack Obama, or oh, I did this, or oh, I did that, as it was this sort of gotcha thing. But what the truth is like Trump, as a business person in New York, being practical, and this is a very liberal town, I did give some money to, I've given money to Schumer. I gave money to Hillary. I've given money to Gillibrand. Barack Obama was a classmate. He's actually a year behind me in law school, but he was at law school with me at the time. I gave money to him when he ran for president, but I've been a lifelong centrist Republican. So, but that's the way of the world in the business community. Many of my friends have given bipartisan checks. I supported Andrew Cuomo, who's a Democrat. He lost the mayor's race, but I supported him unsuccessfully this year. And even though I have stepped out of the politics from a appointed position or politics from being super active, I'm no one's finance chair or anything like that. I am still writing checks to political leaders who I have relationships with and I want to keep.
Okay, very good. So now people know where you're coming from, I hope. Let me start off with a simple question, and then we'll dig down into it. A lot has been written in the past few weeks to the effect that we are now living in a new world order, a world order that is markedly different from the one that you and I both grew up in post World War II. So to tackle that very simple question first, and then we'll get more complicated. Do you agree with that? Do you think that we have entered into this new condition, and you can call it anything you want, new world order, new whatever. And if you agree with that, in what ways do you think it differs?
Well, the world's gotten tougher. The world has gotten way more polarized. I think the world has gotten way more fragmented or segmented. We had a tragedy take place in Minnesota. One side thought it was a cold-blooded murder. The other side thought it was an act of self-defense by an ICE agent. But if you watch the news, I was blown away by the cold-heartedness of both sides. Period. The
Both
end.
sides.
I think yes. Period. I think we have to be in universal agreement. This was an unspeakable tragedy that took place, and this is a failure of what's going on in the society. Now, listen. I don't know if you want me to bring my editorial comments into it.
Sure.
I think it was a cold-blooded murder. I looked at the woman in the car. She may have turned slightly towards the agent, but she turned away from the agent quickly. It was obviously a very nervous person in the car. There looked like there was no mens rea. There was no criminal intent for her to hurt the agent. And she was moving away from him when shots were being fired into her. So, but even the people that were talking about the cold-blooded murder, how about taking a moment and talking about the heartless situation and talking about the child that was left behind as a result of this situation? And so, no, we're in a way rougher place than we were uh, 8 years ago. When I got fired from the White House in 2017, which is now 8.5 years ago, we were in a rough place. We were in a rough place. You and I are old enough to remember Newt Gingrich and the Contract for
Yeah.
America in 1994. We were in a rough place, but we didn't have this level of fragmentation because we really didn't have the social media. But now we've allowed, Charles, our adversaries. We've allowed the Chinese and their server farms, the North Koreans, the Russians. The Iranians, you pick an adversary of the United States, they have dedicated people that are launching vitriolic attacks left and right on TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. You pick the medium. They're there to fight and they're there to create tribalism and they're to create hostility and they're there to call into question the faith of our democracy. And so, yeah, no, we're in a tough spot. We're in a worse spot than I would have predicted. If you said to me when I was a kid, listen, the Danish government is going to be preparing for a military invasion by the United States of their sovereign territory, and
Yeah.
their prime minister is going to be telling their army officers, shoot to kill in the event of an invasion. We're going to treat this like it's a Nazi invasion or you pick a bad guy invasion entering. And if you had said to me that there was going to be a government in the United States that would say that a member of NATO, that they wanted to take their territory and that every option was on the table, including a military option to take their territory, I would have said, okay, that's certainly not going to happen in my lifetime. We have a predictable democracy, a rules-based society, and the United States, whether you like the United States or dislike the United States, there's more evidence than not that it's been roughly trying to do the right thing since the end of the Second World War. Are we imperfect? Yes. Is there racism, tribalism, host of issues, all the issues that you expect for human beings to have? Yes. But are we searching as an aspirational country to try to be a better country? I think we are. But I don't think this speaks well of the United States, if I'm being brutally honest with people. I mean, again, you can believe it was a cold-blooded murder, or you could believe it was a act of self-defense. But I think you have to step back and say, whoa, how did we get here? How did this happen where we're now walking and cruelty's the point, Charles. The expression, don't believe your lying eyes.
Yeah.
So now Trump is out there lying to people. Kristi Noem is out there lying to people. Don't believe your lying eyes. And I think this is a really bad thing for us because we're now not only are we in the age of tribalism, in the age of AI, and in the age of video that can be artificially created now through AI, we're in the post-truth society. And we've been there before. Other
Hmm.
leaders have lied about things. Stalin has taken people out of pictures with him. I'm not saying politicians don't lie. I understand that they do, and that's potentially part of the job that they have is one of lying. So I'm not sitting here saying that I'm not a real world person and I'm not
Yeah.
overly idealistic, but these are big lies. You go on a website and you're going to tell people on the website that what happened on January 6th, 5 years ago, didn't happen. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what that means. I don't even know. I don't even know how to respond to that. So, in the last week since beginning of the year, we've had a year's worth of activity in a week. And so
Yeah.
we're taking out Maduro. We have threatened the bellicosity of aggressive rhetoric and potentially military activity in Colombia, Cuba. We've threatened Greenland. Obviously, that's Denmark. We've suggested again that Canada should be the 51st state. You've
Yeah.
got
So far, New Jersey is safe.
yeah. New Jersey's safe for now. You know what I mean? Who the hell knows? He's been told by the Supreme Court he can't deploy the National Guard, and he's been respectful of that, but he's pumping the ICE agents. So you have to stop and think about it for a second. We have rhetoric going against Iran, Cuba, Venezuela. You could say, okay, they're long-term adversaries of the United States. But Denmark,
Yeah.
Canada? I mean, guys,
So,
what
but is
are
it?
we doing?
But
And
is it?
by the way, the biggest
Yeah, go ahead.
problem for me, Charles, is the
Yeah.
Congress. Because having a nut job become the president, that's in the Constitution. In the event that you have a nut job as the president, look to Article 1. The members of the Congress will say, well, there's a nut job. He's a malicious criminal. We have to remove the nut job. The Congress won't act. Congress is afraid of him.
You sort of anticipated my question, which is it simplistic to put all the blame for all the negative things that you ticked off in the past few minutes in terms of where the world and where the United States is at this particular point in time? Is it simplistic to put the blame solely on Donald Trump?
No, I would argue that he has risen, if you will, from lots of cross currents that have happened in the society that have made Donald Trump. You don't get Donald Trump on his own, Charles. You get Donald Trump because a very large group of people in the society feel left out. You get Donald Trump because we offshored our manufacturing and we blighted a very large part of the flyover states in this country. And lots of small towns have been decimated with drugs, inactivity of labor, income inequality. I'm going to give you a brutal statistic.
Hmm.
And this is from realtor.com, and your guys can go look it up. The average income necessary to afford the average house in the United States, these are the medians, excuse me, not the average, the middle
Yeah.
point of the whole dispersion, $425,000 median.
Hmm.
The median income necessary then to afford that so that you're not cash strapped and your house rich and cash poor is $135,000. The median income in the United States right now is $84,000. So the inflation's gone crazy. The median income hasn't risen concomitant with the inflation. And you have half of the country that's below $84,000. Said differently, Charles, you have people that are missing dental appointments. They're missing physician exams. They're skipping a week of baby formula and trying to supplement it with something else. Their car's been crashed, but they're driving around in a jalopy because they don't have the money. They don't have the bandwidth of disposable income in the event that there's a crisis in their family. And, so those people have said, hey, enough of this. We don't like this. And they either go to the right and find a populist leader on the right, or they go to the left and find a populist leader on the left. And the mainstream politicians have missed the boat because, what are they focused on? They want campaign donations. Because of Citizens United, they get unlimited campaign donations from the rich and from the big corporations. And guess what the legislative agendas look like now since Citizens United? Big pharma, big food, tax cuts for the rich, kleptocracy, corporate welfare. And the people are pissed. And they're voting in the Trumps. They're voting in Mondani from here in New York. He's our mayor. And it shouldn't surprise anybody that this is happening given the spread now that we have in the economy between
All
the
right, so
haves
you
and
had
have-nots.
so you have this clash, and I had presumed when you were talking about populists on the left, you were probably referring to the newly elected mayor of the
Yeah.
city of New York, right?
Hmm.
So you have this clash
Yeah.
between part of the country that feels like it's been left behind, so they are gravitating toward the left, and then you have the other part of the country that's gravitated and gravitating to the right. Do you get a sense of which side is winning this battle? And maybe that's a foolish question. Maybe
Mhm.
talking in terms of winning and losing is silly. I don't know. But do you have a sense of where this is headed?
I think they're both losing. They're
Both
both losing.
losing.
Yeah, both losing. Yeah, they're listen, the independents, non-Republicans, non-Democrats, 44% of the registered vote now. The two parties, Democrats are at 33, Republicans are at 27. So, I mean, that's the registration. So, you tell me, you know, and I may have those numbers slightly wrong, but let's
Yeah.
say 40 for independents, 30-ish for and 20-ish for Democrats, Republicans, respectively. You could Google it, but the point I'm making is there's more independents now than there are Democrats, and there's more independents now than there are Republicans, and so both parties are having a disaffection from them. I think Trump is really getting his ass handed to him because of the ICE situation. His approval rating's down to 36%. He's in his own echo chamber, believing
Yeah.
everything hunky dory, and he's doing so well. And I get that, but he's not doing so well. And he'll have 25% of the people where he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and stay in power forever and all that sort of stuff. But, he's not doing well. So the Republicans will likely current trajectory. And we both know this November of 26 is a lifetime away in politics. But the current trajectory is he's going to lose the House. And he more or less said that to the caucus of Republicans last weekend. And of course, he didn't make it about anybody other than himself. He said, "Well, you got to help me, otherwise I'm going to get impeached." He doesn't want to get impeached again. There's a lot of nefarious activity. There's a lot of grift. There's a lot of self-dealing. There's I'm going to praise some of our adversaries. I'm going to attack and threaten military action against our friends. You want to remove Maduro. Okay, I get that and I understand that. And I have a lot of Venezuelan friends that are expats that
Mhm.
live here in New York or Miami, and they want there to be progress and they want there to be peaceful transition into something more democratic and more capitalist in Venezuela. Maduro and uh, his predecessor Chavez, they weakened that country. They hurt the country significantly. But you you're not going to get there by getting one guy out of there. It's not going to happen. You've got these collectivos that are riding around. You have drug lords that are controlling parts of the country. This is going to be a massive cleanup operation, and we're not good at that, Charles. We had regime change in Iraq. It turned out into a disaster. We removed the Taliban in Afghanistan. So we're going to have a regime change. We went from the Taliban to the Taliban in 20
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Unmitigated disaster. So again, I pray for the Venezuelan people. I hope it happens. I want them to have great success and large measure be integrated back into the community of nations. But the way Trump is going about this isn't optimal. And the way he's going about it, he's going to really set back the country. The next person that comes in, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I talked about this in other episodes of this podcast. I knew Trump fairly well in the 80s when I was in New York and working for CNN, and I was doing a lot of business news at the time. And I would often go up to his office with a camera crew, and we would elicit his opinions about whatever was happening at the time with foreign trade or, you name it. And at the time, he struck me as being, he was pretty friendly and he seemed fairly sane, as sane as anybody I would do interviews with. And I would go up to his office, every so often. And then I hit an interesting side of him, which was I ended up investigating his casinos at the time in a casino in New Jersey. And that led to what has now been described by many as an infamous interview that you can still find online, where he walked out on me and pretended that he was shocked by what we were discovering and what we were doing. And he tried to get me and my producers and everybody else fired. And to Ted Turner's credit at the time, he basically told him to take a hike, and we did the story as we saw fit. But the point I'm getting at here is, uh, did there come a time when, even in that short time when you were in the White House, and I presume that there was some amount of time before you got the job where you had to spend time with the guy, when did you get a sense of what he was really like? Not perhaps the image he was projecting to the public, but when did you get the sense that, this guy is not what I perhaps thought he was, or maybe you always thought he was a particular kind of person?
Well, I think we do this to ourselves through cognitive dissonance. We see things and then we equivocate in our minds to say, okay, that's okay. I didn't really see that. The Mexicans are rapists. Okay, that's okay. And we see these things and we go through these machinations. So if I'm guilty of anything, I should have seen it earlier. But I think when I was in the White House and the process that he was running and the lack of governance, with the cabinet and the lack of long-term thinking or decision making, and then the anger basis for a lot of the things and the vitriolic hatred, and then the vengeance tour, the needing to get back at people. I think I really saw that manifesting in the White House. And, I got fired after 11 days. It was a brutal time in my life to get fired like that. But there was a sense of relief by me when I was fired like that. I know that
Mm.
probably sounds crazy, but yes, I had a shortcoming. I failed at that job. There was some level of humiliation with the firing. But at the same time, it's like, whoa, thank God I'm not going to be in this viper's nest anymore. I would say that most people see it. I'm going to stipulate something on your show that he's not well liked. I would say nobody likes him. I don't think his
Mm.
family members like him. I don't think his cabinet members really like him. They'll all lie and kiss his ass because he's a powerful guy. The people that like him are the people that are at 1 or 2 electron orbits distant from him. I don't know
Sure.
anybody in his inner circle that ends up unscathed by him.
Yeah, I mean, is he? Neither you nor I are trained psychologists, so I'm a little hesitant to go down this road, but I'm going to go down the road anyway. What the heck? I mean, is he a narcissistic sociopath?
Uh, yes, I think he is. I think he's a sociopath. He has, listen, he doesn't think about the White House the way I think about the White House. He doesn't think about the decision making the way I think about the decision making. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
He doesn't
yeah.
think about it that way. These other presidents have aged monumentally. He's not aging. Yes, he looks older. He's going to turn 80, but he treats people like they're objects in their field of vision more than they are anything of human flesh or need to be empathetic with them. And again, think about what he did over the weekend. He said, hey, he didn't say, hey, we need to win. Here's my vision for America. Here's how I'm going to improve the lives of Americans. No, no, we need to win so I don't get impeached. I'm trying to rake in $5 billion here a year in emoluments from being in this position. And I can't have that. That won't happen as successfully if I get impeached.
Is there any part of you that feels sorry for him?
It's interesting you say that because there's a, the answer is no, because he's causing so much harm that I don't feel sorry for him. But as a human being, there's obviously something wrong with him. And so you would want the guy to find some level of peace or some level of healing, whatever the pain he is feeling internally, he wants to inflict on all of us.
And I do wonder, I mean, I know, as I'm sure you do, a fair amount about his childhood and his dealings with his father, Fred Trump, the source really of his money that he then lost several times in many bankruptcies. But I mean, do you think that is it one of those sort of classic stories of a kid who is constantly seeking recognition and accolades because maybe he didn't get enough from his own in his own childhood. I don't know enough about his childhood
Could be even deeper than that. There's a reason why his father sent him to the military school.
to get rid of him, I presume.
Yeah, something was going on there. I mean, he's got this unquenchable need for attention and this lack of fulfillment, and he wants to hurt people. Cruelty is the point, Charles.
Well,
Cruelty is the
that's
point.
really
And by the
interesting.
way, when I first met you, just so you know, you did tell me that story
Oh,
about you did tell me about the
yeah,
almost the eye color change
yeah.
on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, he was as I said, when I used to sit in his office in the 80s with a camera crew, he was fine. He would tell, off-color jokes, most of which I don't remember anymore, but I do remember them being somewhat off-color. But so do a lot of business people, and he didn't come across, to be quite honest, as anybody who was particularly uh, you know, interesting in the sense of the term that I never thought, for example, that he was going to be a political leader. That if you would have told me in 1985 or 1990, which was when we had our run-in, Trump and I, that someday he would not only run but win the presidency, not once but twice, I would have laughed my head off. And I think most people in New York certainly would have done the same thing. So I do have this sort of constant amazement that he managed to pull this off, as I said, not once, but twice. Uh, Given what you said before about the sort of alchemy that went into his ascension politically, people who are upset and people who feel they were left behind, nonetheless, does he not get some credit for doing something right? I mean, you don't get to be president of the United States by constantly doing things wrong. What is it that he's done right to get to the White House twice?
Such a great question. So let's talk about it. He has unrelenting energy and unrelenting resilience. You have to give him credit for that. His stamina is off the chart. Number two, and perhaps number one, he has the best political instincts of anybody that I've ever seen. You don't go from being a reality television star and a minor real estate developer uh, to a American president. You do that in 18 months. I mean, that's absolutely astounding. That's seeing things ahead of other people and slaying traditional politicians. He's changed the landscape. The bellicosity of his rhetoric, all of that other stuff has been monumentally changed as a result of Donald Trump. What has he done right? I do think he's identified and acted upon the issue that we have with China. I would probably have done it differently, but I think he was the first politician to really bring up that they took advantage of the trading system, the global trading system, and they were really working behind the scenes to undermine the U.S. and the West. And I think he absolutely has to deserve credit for that. I think the NATO situation, if we're being really honest, the Europeans were quite lax with their requirements for NATO, and the American government was quite lax in pushing them and enforcing their requirements into NATO. And I think he has done a very good and appropriate job of pushing them to get to the GDP numbers pursuant to the percentage of GDP to defense spending that is required by the contract and the treaty. The drug interdiction is way down. The border, I do agree with him on the border. You can't have an open border, Charles, because Milton Friedman, if you're a conservative and you like Trump, let me give you some fortification. Milton Friedman, the great conservative economist, once said, you can't have a welfare state, which the United States does have, and an open border, because the people will flood across the border to participate in the welfare state. That's just common practice. Okay. So to me, there are things that he's doing. Again, there's good Trump and there's bad Trump. He's helped the cryptocurrency industry in a way that the Biden, Gensler, Harris's would never have done. That's good for the United States, better for us to maintain our mantle of financial services leadership. So, yeah, I mean, there's some things he's done that are good, but I think the aura of what he's doing and the negative energy of what he's doing, and he's now transitioning the United States from a trusted ally to somebody that may move aggressively, and I'm using his language, not mine, militarily. Militarily. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the thing I would really be worried about.
Do you share the notion that some commentators have expressed that Trump is not going to leave the White House? And yes, I know all the constitutional blocks to that, but one of the things that Trump has proven over and over and over again is he has managed to take conventional wisdom and even legality and turn it on its head. Do you see that as as a realistic possibility at all?
It's a good question. So, um, I don't, I'm going to tell you the truth because it's a great
Yeah.
part of your personality and your objective journalism. I don't know the answer to that. So I can only give you a range of hypotheticals, but I'm going to say something to you that I think is important for the country. Okay. That Cicero said this better than me. We have to be slaves to the law in order to be free.
Hmm.
And, we have to have a system in place where we do things in a legal way and we don't overly stress the legal system. And one of the things that he did recently, which I applaud, he put the National Guard in places. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't have the National Guard in those places without the authority of the state officials, the state governors. And he adhered to that,
For
and
now.
for now. Yeah, for
Yeah.
now. Yeah. But I'm saying you have to be subordinate to the law so that people feel that the decentralized nature of this government has made us strong and prosperous. An autocratic government, it typically works like this. There's a cycle. The business environment is good for a period of time. Then there's a kleptocracy that kicks in. Then there's broad-based corruption. then the average person feels completely left out, and then the world explodes.
Do you think that Vance, JD Vance, is the sort of heir apparent? Let me tell you what my scenario is, and you can tell me if you think it's too weird. I think that Donald Trump fancies himself a 21st century version of Joseph Kennedy, in that I think he fancies his Trump, name as living on not just on buildings, but also in the body politic. I think he wants his son to run for president. That's my own sense.
Right.
And I cite as evidence that his eldest son has been going around the country doing lots of speeches, most of which, except for maybe Fox TV, really aren't being, picked up by, so-called mainstream media. So a lot of people aren't aware of it. But he does do a lot of politicking, if you will. And when you do that, as you know, Anthony, that means you sort of collect IOUs, right? That you can use later down the road if you decide to have a political career. I think that when the time comes, I think that President Trump is going to say the best person to lead this country forward, because I don't think he's going to try to run again. I think even Donald Trump is going to succumb to the restrictions of the Constitution. But I do think he is going to try to anoint his son. That's my own weird notion. Over to you.
Well, yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. I think that's you and I are in a general agreement, and so there's not really much I can add to that. I guess the only thing I would say to you is what happens after Trump. So let's stipulate that he's out of office in 3 years. And let's stipulate that yes, he did change the game, but a lot of the things that he changed are related to his personality, and there's a cult of personality around him. So now, where does the litigation go? What happens to the Republicans? Do they return to traditional Republicanism? Do they become more MAGA? Will MAGA be accepted from somebody that's not Donald Trump? And then what happens to the Democrats? Will they be able to stop the infighting? And then let's say that there's a new leader. Let's say there's a Democratic president. What does he do? Does he go after the Republicans with the vengeance of Trump? Does he use Trump's playbook to go after the people the way the president did? Or do they try to create a healing? Or let's say it's JD Vance. Does he make things worse? You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I do wonder, and sort of circling back to how we began this episode, talking about a change in the world order and whether or not we are living through that. And I was referring, of course, then to the international order, but also from a domestic point of view. Are we in a place where we can never turn back? And I don't mean turn back in a nostalgic sense, but I think you get what my meaning. Have we passed a threshold where there's no chance in our lifetime, certainly, to revert back to the kind of sensible, rules-based political world that maybe Joe Biden knew existed when he was an up-and-coming United States senator? Is that forever gone, or at least gone within, as I said, our lifetimes?
It feels like it. It does feel like it. And I think that, if you read the book, The Fourth Turning, every 80 years, you get a major seismic shift in cultural activity. There are people born, let's talk about Mayor Mondani for a second. There are people gone uh, from the world stage now. World War II veterans have died. There are processes that were put in place by those veterans after the end of the Second World War. 80 years have gone by. Those people are gone. And the people alive now, the 35-year-old mayor of New York, it's like, why the hell do we have those processes in place? What good are those processes? And those processes were put in place to solve a problem of the 1940s or potentially the 1950s. We're now in the 2025s. Why do we need those things? And that is consistent. That is consistent with generational activity and cultural change.
Are you hopeful?
Yes, I am hopeful. I'm
Why?
hopeful. Because by and large, there's the younger group of people. Some of them are my children, frankly. My oldest child is 33, but some of the people I work with and some of the people I talk to when I go on speaking tours, they're less, the ones that really want to help are less ideological. They're more data dependent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yes, I am hopeful.
Anthony Scaramucci, thank you so much for taking the
Hey, look,
time.
it's awesome. It's awesome to be on with you. We'll have to do a home and away. You have to come on my podcast.
I'm more than happy to. And thank you for being with us on SOS America. For those of you watching or listening, as always, any comments we more than welcome. If you would like to subscribe, it is absolutely free, so we encourage you to do so. Until the next episode of SOS America, I'm Charles Feldman. Thank you so much.